F-Zero is one of those games that... F-Zero is a game that really makes you feel like a fucking piece of shit. The way your car jumps off the ramp towards the blue arrow and its inevitable demise just oozes with the exaggerated swagger of a... F-Zero is a really great game, except for this specific jump. What the fuck? But hey, at least it's better than Hyrule Warriors. It's hard to overstate the influence that F-Zero had not only on the genre of racing video games, but on the gaming sphere as a whole. From its innovative use of graphics to its hunky bounty hunting protagonist, this series has cultivated a fervent fan base that are still clamoring for a new release 17 years after the latest, and for good reason.
The game is fun.
R.I.P. Reggie, gone but never forgotten. I'd rather not get caught up in the weeds of the series' legacy and the history of why they haven't released a game since 2004. I'm sure there are plenty of videos out there that explore that topic thoroughly. What I want to do is approach the original game with my black-pilled zoomer e-boy lens and talk about why I think F-Zero holds up exceptionally well in a modern context. So, let's get some of the most subjective things out of the way first. The OST is a shining example of how strict technical limitations can produce some truly genius compositions. There are the obvious classics like Mute City, and Big Blue, but there are also more obscure gems like White Land, which we heard at the beginning of the video, and even the song that plays at the end of a Grand Prix, which puts Seinfeld's key bass line to shame. This soundtrack is a club with a bangers only sign out front, and if you disagree with me, then history disagrees with you. The graphics have probably aged the poorest out of all the different aspects of this game since its release 31 years ago, but that doesn't mean they're horrible, not by a long shot. The process for creating this sort of forced 3D perspective was genuinely innovative at the time, or so I've read. I wasn't around back then, obviously. But what impresses me in this new age of 4K and ray tracing is that for all its shortcomings, the art style is still clear enough to provide a consistent experience. In other words, the images on screen are never so muddy that you can't tell where you are or what's going on. This is something that sounds very obvious in retrospect, but there are plenty of modern games out there, especially modern sci-fi games, that completely throw clarity out the window. Girlfriend Reviews actually coined the perfect term for describing this sort of phenomenon: diarrhea Christmas lights. In F-Zero, there's some definite DCL on the sides of the tracks and in the background, but the track itself and all of the obstacles that appear within it are all clearly defined. There are a few nitpicks that I have that probably boil down to technical limitations that they just couldn't do at the time, but they still annoyed me, so I'm going to talk about them anyway. I've played the game for about 30 to 40 hours at this point, and it still is kind of difficult for me to gauge how a collision with another car on the track is going to affect my trajectory. Obviously the answer is just going to be, oh, well, just don't get hit, sweaty. But it is really annoying, and it's led to many a heated gamer moment. Cars, Jesus Christ. Oh my fucking god. But there is an even bigger issue that I have with the art style of this game that is probably even more as a result of the technical limitations that were available in the early 90s. It only happens on the Deathwind stages. Can you guess what the problem is yet? Yeah, it's the wind. For those of you who haven't played or haven't gotten there yet, there are wind effects on these stages that push your car left or right depending on where you are in the level. The problem is there's no visual or audio cue that this is happening, so you might go through the level 4 to 5 times before you even realize what's going on. That's not the end of your troubles though, because the wind will change direction on you in the middle of the level, and you'll have to contend with that while at the same time parsing all of the normal information that you'd find on the track proper. Some of you fucklers out there are definitely gonna say something in the comments like, actually, there is a visual cue. You're supposed to look at the background to see which way the wind's blowing, idiot. First of all, no. You take a look at this footage and you tell me with a straight face that anyone is supposed to gather any valuable information from this mess. Second of all, even if that was the case, it's a head-ass place to put a visual cue, because your eyes are typically always looking at the track ahead of you. An exaggerated wind effect would have done wonders to alleviate this problem, or even a small icon down by your car would have been better than nothing. But again, this is a nitpick, and it's probably a result of the technical limitations at the time, so it gets a pass. There are a few extraneous members of the heads-up display, like the mini-map and the timer. They don't take up a whole lot of space, but they don't really add much to the gameplay either. And yes, I do think it's about high time we talk about the gameplay. The controls and the handling of this game are the things that really make me go,
who would believe it? You haven't aged a day.
What's even sweeter about that is that the levels are designed and ordered in such a way that you learn all of the essential controls just by playing the game alone. In doing that, each individual player can come up with their own unique solution to whatever obstacle is set before them. There are no right or wrong answers, there's only the finish line. Well, actually that's not 100% true, and it's at this time that I'd like to take a seat with the boomers and Gen Xers out there who actually played this game when it came out and have a frank conversation about how this game teaches you to play the game. I'm talking specifically now about the jump in Whiteland 2. The rallying cry that I keep hearing from you guys is, you know, games back in the day didn't used to hold your hand as much as they do these days. Back then we used to teach ourselves how to play these games, and now all they want to do is tell you what to do. I know it certainly feels like you taught yourself how to play these games, especially compared to how many AAA games these days choose to tutorialize, but you're taking credit away from the level designers and placing it on yourself, which is not a good look in my opinion. These levels and courses are designed in such a way as to nudge you how to learn certain controls before you're forced to actually perform them. You're nudged to drift before you're actually forced to drift. You're nudged to learn how to strafe before you're actually forced to strafe. And so we come to the jump in Whiteland 2, and there is nothing, not one course in this entire game that nudges you to hold backwards on the D-pad while you're in the air to go farther. And yet that's exactly what you're expected to do without any sort of warning whatsoever. I know that it was super fun for you guys to sit around the lunch table with your fucking Indiana Jones lunchboxes and talk about all the dumb, archaic bullshit that developers used to put into games back in the day, but for all of us living in the present, it's just kind of annoying at this point. And don't keep pretending that you beat Super Metroid all by yourself. We all know they used to print strategy guides for that shit. And that's just the thing, strategy guides and chats around the lunch table are not things that get preserved when your old ass games get ported to new consoles. So you can whine all you want about how much games these days hold your hand, but hey, at least we can read, that's all I'm gonna say about that. What was I talking about again? Oh right, the gameplay. Let's talk about the win and loss conditions. If you don't make the top 3 by the final lap, you're donezo. If you run off the map and run into the diarrhea Christmas lights, you're donezo. If you run out of health, you're donezo. Oh my fucking god! Jesus Christ! What the fuck? If you get donezoed too many times, then you get kicked out of the game and sent back to the title screen. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about this setup. You can accrue more lives by playing better, and getting kicked back to the title screen makes sure that you won't be ramming your head into a brick wall for too long. The insistence on getting in the top 3 is just a way to make sure that you're ready to move on to the next level. It is a bit steep of a learning curve to begin with, but with a little bit of patience and perseverance, you'll be drifting around those dummy cars in no time. When I first started playing F-Zero, it was something to sort of fill the cracks in the schedule. You could pick it up, get a couple races in, put it down, come back to it later, and I would keep playing it like that for a while. And it wasn't until a couple months in that I realized I kept coming back to it. There's something about the way this game controls that is literally impossible for me to put into words. The best comparison that I could try to make is to Mario 64. In both games, there's a very clear emphasis and priority on the movement of the player's character. It feels silly to resort to words like game feel, but that's exactly what I'm trying to describe here. The game feels incredible to play, and that is something that doesn't age. There's only one real objective flaw with this game, and that's that it doesn't have any multiplayer mode. But I mean, I wouldn't have anyone to play it with anyway, so it's not really that much of a problem for me. I'm so alone. It feels kind of weird to give this game the score that it deserves, but I don't care. This is a landmark video game. The history of video games would not be the same if you removed it, and I enjoyed it very, very much.
That's a 10.
It's a 10. It's 10. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and if you want to take your support for my channel further, you can hit up the link to my Patreon in the description. Fight the algorithm, subscribe, drink more water, and I'll see you on the next one.